Today I'm going to go through a few of the drills for the joining and separating sentences packet. The first two sections on here you've seen before in the pre-test, but we're going to look at the answers to them anyway. Number 1. In 2006, the beverage marketing company Power Brands was co-founded by Darren Ezra and Martin Molina. Complete sentence, put a check mark. Both of whom had prior experience in the beverage industry. So that one is not a complete sentence. What makes this a fragment is the whom. When you have whom in a sentence, it has to be in the same sentence as the word it renames. So whom here makes it a fragment. So that's not the answer. Both of them would make that a complete sentence, but we have only the comma here, so that would create a run-on. A semicolon is exactly the same as a period, which is exactly the same as a, so that's also wrong. In this case, we need to have only a comma because you only need a comma to separate the independent from the dependent clause. Number 2, which of the following would not be acceptable? So in this case, that means the way it's printed in the sentence does work, but we're looking for the only one out of the answer choices which would not. So all of them are okay except for one. And that one that does not work is the correct answer. The company expanded rapidly. It currently employs people in more than a dozen countries on every continent except in Antarctica. So we know that a period works. Because we know that period equals semicolon equals comma fanboys, we know that just changing the period to a semicolon would also work. So F is not the answer. And then G and H both remove the subject it. So these are different from the original sentence. J, though, keeps the subject and then changes the period to only a comma. So if you know a period works, a comma by itself cannot work. This creates a run-on. The reason why G and H both work, meaning they're not the answer, is that it turns that second sentence into a dependent clause. So just the comma in H and just the conjunction in G would not create a run-on because it's just one independent clause in that sentence. Okay, second passage. Since I learned to control a pencil at the age of 4, the word since makes this a dependent clause. So that semicolon cannot work because this is not a complete sentence. So A is wrong. I know that if the semicolon can't work, then the period also cannot work because they're the same. B, by putting which, that turns the second sentence also into a fragment. So B is even more wrong than A and C because now there's two dependent clauses and no independent. So the correct answer is D. We keep that dependent clause first, but we connect it using a comma only instead of a sentence ender, like a period or a semicolon. Number 2, just like the number 2 above, we're looking for the only one that won't work. Today I keep a journal, period. I set aside time to write in it every day. So we have 2 complete sentences here, in this case with the period. If the period works, then we know that a semicolon also works. And then in G, we have a comma fanboy. So that also works. So G and H are not the answers. I'm going to move that so I can see that comma in F. So in F, it turns the period into a comma. We know that if a period works, then a comma by itself cannot work. So F is the answer because it creates a comma splice run-on. J is okay because it removes the subject. So it's not a run-on, it's now an independent, an extra long independent clause.